Good morning, Year 11. As promised, I said I'd talk you through your homework, which is an interpretation question that what I believe and the results seem to suggest is the toughest question on the papers, on all of the papers. So don't worry if you're a bit unsure about how to tackle this. But don't forget, I have written down, or there is included here, a 4-step guide on the sorts of things that you need to do. What I'm going to do for this first go is start you off in the right direction, and then you've got to use your own knowledge, use your revision guides, use things you find on the internet, use whatever you need, use your notes to have your own knowledge to assess these interpretations. So we've got Historian 1, Historian 2. Now it's not like Historian 1 says the opposite to Historian 2. They're writing about different things to do with Brown versus Topeka from a slightly different angle. This historian is emphasising the massive success of the Brown versus Topeka case. Now, if you're going to be a grade 6, 7, 8, 9 sort of student, you need to go a bit further than saying this historian emphasises the success of the Brown versus Topeka case. You need to see what exactly is this person's argument. Because the first point in what you have to do when you write an interpretation answer is you have to start by summarising the key arguments from the interpretation to show the examiner that you understand it. An introduction, therefore, would be, it's about interpretation 2 is the question, so you would say, interpretation 2 suggests, blah, 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 and ultimately, I agree with that. Or I largely disagree with that, or I agree with it to some extent. Because you know by now, you have to begin a history answer with what your actual answer is in your introduction, but in this case you also have to show the examiner that you understand what this person is saying, because in this case it's asking you about interpretation 2. And then, as it says, you write a paragraph, picking out quotes, and use your own knowledge to judge what this historian is saying. I'll give you an example. It says, the verdict gave Southern black people a belief in the American political system that was used effectively by Martin Luther King and other black leaders. A belief in the American political system. There is evidence, if we look at a key event that, say, Rosa Parks was involved in, where African Americans went back to the political system to try to get what they wanted, and they got it. So that suggests that there's some potential truth in that particular quote. And you pick out some other quotes and see if you can either say reasons why this is a good interpretation, or why this is a good interpretation. I keep talking about this one. This is the one you should be assessing more than the other one. So it says, write a paragraph supported by your own knowledge about why you might agree with the interpretation 2, and refer to interpretation 1 as well, if you can. The third point in your drop by drop how you do it is write a paragraph supported by your knowledge about why you might disagree with this interpretation. Now, in the disagree one, it will be a lot easier to refer to interpretation 1. And finally, conclusion, do you agree with interpretation 1, or how far do you agree with interpretation 2? Keep doing it. And why do you agree or disagree with interpretation 2? So the answers set out, introduction with your answer and a summary of what interpretation 2 is saying. Paragraph on all the reasons, using your own knowledge, why you might agree with it. You pick out a quote, use some own knowledge. You pick out a quote, use some own knowledge. Even better if anything in here can confirm anything there, but that's going to be really, really tricky. Your next paragraph, why might you disagree with some of the things that are said there? Pick out a quote, own knowledge. Pick out quote, own knowledge. Pick out quote, use interpretation 1 to say why that one might be wrong. You have got, even though it says how far do you agree with interpretation 2, you have got to use both interpretations in your answer, even though the focus is this one. And then you have a conclusion. So intro, for, against, conclusion. You have to focus on the question, you have to use own knowledge, you have to use quotes. You do those things, you'll do alright. But don't worry if it's hard. It is hard, it's supposed to be hard.